A year ago I put out a video called Why I Love Bungie, Halo and Destiny, a retrospective. In that video I praised Bungie for the Forsaken expansion and how it felt like it breathed new life into the franchise. It felt just like how Destiny 1 felt with the Taken King expansion, giving players exactly what they've been asking for with new area to explore, a fun and interesting story, and even new puzzles that unlock unique exotic weapons. But with the release of Shadowkeep expansion last October and the 3 seasons that have followed it, the Season of Undying, the Season of Dawn and now the Season of the Worthy, what is the current state of Destiny 2, and has it gotten any better? Let's find out. First I want to talk about Shadowkeep and give you a bit of background on the DLC and the state of Bungie at the time. As many of you know and as I covered in my last Destiny video, Bungie split from its longtime publisher Activision in January of 2019. To many, and even myself, were extremely happy about this development. Activision is renowned for sleazy monetization in almost all of their games, trying to nickel and dime their customers as much as possible. So for Bungie to go completely independent from Activision and manage to keep the rights to the Destiny franchise, it felt like a win-win for both the developers and the fans. Bungie could now take Destiny in any direction they wanted to without the influence of the higher-ups at Activision, and Bungie were quick to double down on this, releasing a Vidoc just before the release of Shadowkeep talking about new horizons and letting players play their own way. It was exciting for everyone. Remember, Bungie was just coming off the biggest expansion Destiny 2 had ever seen, and players' expectations were pretty high to say the least. The question was, could they do the same with Shadowkeep without the financial backing of Activision, and without the help of other development studios like Vicarious Visions, who would help them develop Destiny and Destiny 2? But Shadowkeep was shaping up to be the biggest expansion that Bungie had released yet. Firstly, we were returning to the moon, a place we had already explored in Destiny 1, but things this time were different. This time we were confronting our nightmares, as Bungie put it. And by the looks of the trailers, we're going to be fighting old enemies that we had defeated from the main Destiny 2 campaign to all the way back in the Destiny 1 raids. It was shaping up to be an interesting story. The expansion even reintroduced Eris Morn, the lady with the terrifying glowing green eyes that leaked darkness, who we hadn't seen since the Taken King. Bungie also promised a complete rework of armor and stats. This was now called Armor 2.0 and allowed players to completely customize the stats and modifications of their armor to become as powerful as they wanted to be. They were doubling down the RPG aspect of Destiny, something they had not done before. Alongside this, Shadowkeep would obviously have new armor, weapons, ships, emotes, and shaders, as well as new activities to participate in, with the new nightmare hunts and the new dungeon called the Pit of Heresy. But most surprisingly, the base game of Destiny 2, alongside its first 2 DLCs, Curse of Osiris and Warmind, as well as the first few seasons, would all be going free to play. But more on that in a bit. Shadowkeep is a good expansion. Is it as good as Forsaken? No, not by a long shot, but it does have its moments. When you first touch down the moon and assault the Scarlet Keep side by side with other Guardians, it's a special moment. And when you finally make your way inside the keep and you make your way through the dark tunnels and out onto the cliffs and see the floating manifestations of dead Guardians, it's a sight to see. But when you round that corner and you see that pyramid ship sitting there deep under the moon's surface, it gave me chills. My mind exploded with the possibilities at this moment. What does it mean? How can it be here? The last time we had seen these ships were at the end of Destiny 2's main campaign, as Alive the Traveler made its way across deep space and seemingly woke these ships up. What are these ships, by the way? Are they the Darkness? The big looming threat that had wiped out all of humanity and we had been fighting since the first day of Destiny 1 but had no idea what it really was? Were all these questions about to be answered? No, they weren't. Don't get me wrong, the story we got was interesting, as well as the weekly mission to go help Eris Morn get rid of the ghosts that were bothering her. But the end of the expansion sees us entering the heart of the pyramid ship. We end up fighting some lackluster bosses, which are just reskins of older bosses with no new movesets or attacks, and we finally find an orb, and this scene plays.
have heard your cries for help. And soon we will answer. Who are you? Don't you recognize us? We are not your friend. We are not your enemy. We are your salvation.
We are then immediately teleported back to Eris Morn. We get a bit of dialogue, and that's it. No big boss fight, no ending, no nothing. It all ends very abruptly and without any payoff. Now Bungie did say this was going to be an ongoing story, that Shadowkeep was the start of the story and the seasons after would continue that story until it all culminates in a huge finale in Season 12, that everybody should be there if you've ever played Destiny. And while it does get me excited, it is a bit much to ask me to pay $40 for an expansion that has no ending, but if I do want an ending, I'm going to have to fork out $14 every season to continue that story just to see the conclusion. Forsaken had a beginning, middle and end, but it also left room for the story to continue on, and even that plot thread that Bungie planned at the end of that expansion hasn't been paid off yet. Now Bungie is renowned for doing this. It's not the first time this has happened, and I understand that it's difficult to try and wrap up a story in a neat little bow when it's a massively multiplayer game, but at this point it feels like the Bungie doesn't quite know where the story is going, and that's disappointing. Now onto the gameplay of Shadowkeep. As I said before, the expansion reintroduced the moon into Destiny 2, and there are heaps of things to do there. There are new public events to participate in, new patrols that are given to you from people that are long dead, as well as a new activity called the Altars of Sorrow. This place is like a public event. A bunch of guardians will have to kill waves upon waves of enemies and stop them from travelling to one altar to the other. If the altar fills up, the event ends. But if you can stop them before the timer runs out, you'll go on to the next wave, and the wave after that. The final wave is a huge boss ogre. You have to kill adds around the boss as well as to keep the timer from going down to 0. This can prove difficult. If you don't have enough players or they are a lower light level, they might struggle to kill adds or do damage to the boss. It's an interesting public event that is really rewarding when you finish it. The Nightmare Hunt's also the newest addition to Destiny 2. They're basically missions taken from the main Shadowkeep campaign, but with different modifiers added to them to make them more difficult. The higher the difficulty, the more rewards at the end once you finish it. This also mixes in with the new Season Pass I mentioned earlier. The Season Pass gives you access to a brand new item called the Seasonal Artifact, that gives you different modifications for your weapons and armour to let you take down some unique enemies quicker. Some of these unique enemies are anti-barrier knights or unstoppable ogres, so you need the corresponding mod equipped to take down that enemy. It adds variety to otherwise boring and mundane missions. These enemies are tough, and if you don't have the mods equipped, then you are going to struggle. Now, before we talk about the seasons, I need to talk about Destiny 2 New Light, the free-to-play version of Destiny that was released alongside Shadowkeep. I think it's a brilliant move by Bungie to release the base game as well as the first few seasons of content for free. What I didn't realise is how much of a terrible job they were doing helping New Light players understand the fundamentals of Destiny 2's core gameplay and story. This came to my attention after my girlfriend decided to give Destiny 2 a shot. We built her an account and I prepared her for the basic premise of the game, then let her explore and discover Destiny by herself. Now first off, my girlfriend isn't used to playing first person shooters, let alone MMOs, so I knew that Destiny was going to be a lot to take in. What I wasn't expecting was how confusing Bungie had made it. Bungie had said they wanted to make it easy for players that hadn't played Destiny before to be able to jump straight into the action and be able to do endgame activities with friends that have been playing for a long time. What that really means is getting rid of everything like the Red War campaign, the Curse of Osiris campaign, and the Warmind campaign, and giving you no direction what you need to do next. The player is literally thrown into a sea of random quests and bounties that have no idea what it's for and have no context around why they're doing it in the first place. You would think that Bungie at least would recommend you to play through the Red War first, but to be able to play through Red War you need to go talk to Amanda Holiday in the tower just to play it. It was crazy to see how much Bungie has streamlined and thrown aside content to let players play with friends. It completely ruins the experience of the base game of Destiny. Why not use the Red War as a tutorial for new players? At least it introduces the world, lore, and mechanics of Destiny 2. Alright, that's enough ranting. Onto the season passes and the way Bungie is now handling content going forward. Previously, after the launch of Forsaken, there were 3 seasons of content that were planned: the season of Forge, the season of the Drifter, and the season of Opulence. Each of these seasons added a new activity play, each unique to one another, as well as new exotic quests, power increases, and even 2 new raids. It was a lot of content that was being added to the game, and it was all permanent, meaning that once the seasons were over, you could still go back and do those quests and activities if you missed out. The newer seasons don't work that way. Bungie decided after going independent they wanted to make Destiny an ever-evolving world that players would shape and form. So instead of releasing one season pass that covers 3 seasons, they decided to do it a la carte, meaning that you could pick and choose the seasons you wanted to pay for. But here's where the problems start. Say I bought Season of Undying, the first season after the release of Shadowkeep, and I unlocked all this sweet loot and cool customizations and exotic weapons for my character. And a friend of mine who didn't play the Season of Undying because they weren't playing Destiny at the time wants that armor set and exotic weapon. They have no chance of getting them after the end of the season. So my friend buys the next season so they can get a similar reward. It's the fear of missing out, and it's a real sleazy and scummy way to make people pay for your DLC. Now the counter argument to this may be that Bungie needs to pay for its development time, and there are a lot of people that work on this game that need to be paid. And I get that, that's important. But all I'm saying is I would rather pay the $30 to $40 up front like I did for the original season pass if it means that the content is still there to play after the season ends. Giving me the chance to play all of it rather than worry that I won't have enough time to finish it. Anyway, now that I've finished ranting about that, what content is there in the newer seasons? The Season of Undying added a few different activities. Since it was the first season after Shadowkeep, it was all set on the moon. We had a new public event in which players were to defeat large waves of Vex coming out of a portal, as well as 3 Vex Gate Lords. Once you defeated all 3 Gate Lords, a Vex Overlord would spawn. Defeating the Overlord would force the portal to close. As most public events in Destiny, it was pretty straightforward, but it did offer up some legendary Ingrams and heaps of Vex components that we used to purchase items from our core in the tower. We also had the Vex Offensive, the newest PvE activity, which players had to defeat large waves of Vex, then destroy some floating diamonds with some lasers, then defeat a boss. You know, typical Destiny stuff. There was also a new raid added, the Garden of Salvation. I myself didn't end up being the raid, but I did watch the world firsts. It always seems that raids are the accumulation of the best things about Destiny, from the puzzles to the unique enemies to the big boss that has some puzzle or attacking you to overcome as a team. They're always a blast to watch. Anyway, the season also added new exotic quests, and an endgame variant of the Vex Offensive. See, as the season went on, the story was that we were trying to stop the Vex from bringing back the Undying Mind, a Vex Hydra that we had defeated all the way back in Destiny 1. To do this, we would need to defeat the Undying Mind in a simulation. So as we Guardians were defeating Vex in the offensive and gathering Vex parts, we were adding to a portal being made in the tower. You could actually see the progress of the portal being built as the weeks went by. This is what Bungie meant by a developing world. It really hyped up the whole Destiny community. We were all wondering what was going to happen once the portal was built. All of this built up to the final assault. Guardians spawned into the Vex Offensive to find that nothing had changed. The only slight difference was that the end boss was the Undying Mind, and had a different animation when it spawned in. Other than that, exactly the same as a normal Vex Offensive. It was very disappointing and made the whole thing seem pointless. This is what we were building up to, a lackluster boss that gives us the same legendary gear we already have. The Destiny community wasn't very happy with the way the season ended, and were very vocal in letting Bungie know that. Luckily, Bungie redeemed themselves with the Season of Dawn. The Season of Dawn was an especially exciting one for long-term Destiny fans. We're going to get new exotics, a new PvE mode like the Vex Offensive called the Sundial, as well as a story about Osiris trying to save his old buddy Saint 14. If you have played Destiny as much as I have, then you probably know the story of Saint 14, the legendary titan who had saved the last city on numerous occasions, but ended up getting himself killed somewhere on Mercury, meaning that to save him, we're going to have to go back to the Vex-occupied planet. The last time Mercury had been at the centre of a DLC was Curse of Osiris, which is considered to be Bungie's worst DLC for Destiny 2 to date. But this time, it was different. While the Sundial was a fun activity to do and the enemy boss was changed 3 times during the season for variety, the next activity was completely unexpected. After saving Saint 14 from the corridors of time using the Sundial, you're suddenly given another quest, explore the corridors of time. Sounds simple, right? But once you enter and start running through these doors and into these rooms, they all look the same, except for the symbols near the doorways. Each symbol was different and would change place every time you walk through a door and into another room. And that's when the community started to realise that it was a code. Each of the symbols were exactly the same ones that appeared in the obelisks that are found on different planets in the solar system. The obelisks are part of the season as well and require you to upgrade to get mods for your weapons and armour. The community found out that walking through set doors with different symbols would build a code, and if you did a code right, you would end up in a main room with what looked like a coffin in the centre. There were 21 different codes, and completing each one would give you either an emblem or a piece of lore. It took a whole week for the Destiny community to figure out all the codes and finish the quest, and once completed, those people unlocked the new exotic weapon, Bastion. It was a really interesting and surprising quest that no one knew was going to happen. Bungie has done these sorts of quests in the past, like the Whisper of the Worm or the Outbreak Perfected exotic quests. It shows the brilliance of what Bungie can do when it comes to Destiny. And that leads me into the season that is happening right now, the Season of the Worthy. The Season of Worthy started off with a bang. The Cabal, after their crushing defeat during the Red War and trying to use the corridors of time to change history so they won, have decided to just launch the Almighty at the last city as a last-ditch effort to win the war. Our mission is to stop it by activating Rasputin, a war mind who was built before the fall of humanity and whose job was to try and fight anything that threatened human existence. To do that, we have to rearm Rasputin's hidden underground bunkers by completing a new public event, as well as brand new legendary lost sectors. At the time of writing and making this video, only one bunker has been unlocked, with a few others being unlocked as the season goes by. The roadmap is looking interesting for Season of Worthy, with Trials of Osiris finally making its return this weekend after not being around since Destiny 1, to a new activity, Guardian Games, which sounds like Destiny's version of the Olympics coming later in the season. Who knows what the surprises Bungie will throw in there. As I mentioned before, all of these seasons are building up to a huge conclusion of all the current storylines in Season 12. But Bungie has said this before, and is renowned for throwing away old storylines only to bring them back later in the form of a lore tab, something that a lot of people who play Destiny often will ever see. How many times can we tell Bungie exactly what we want from their game and they agree, only for them to completely backtrack and give us something that is awful and half-baked? That isn't to say that everything Bungie has done with Destiny is bad, because it simply isn't. The game is fun and continually brings you back for more with events and new and interesting quests. I love the community around this game as well that is so passionate and excited over everything Bungie puts out. But the thing is, how many more times can I be disappointed until one day I decide not to play anymore? I seriously hope that Bungie does something new and interesting in the next few seasons of Destiny, something that will pull me back in to reignite my love for this game. I really do. But only time will tell. Thanks for watching.